The NPL Victoria podcast back for another week, and it's a bit of a solemn start to the podcast this week, I have to say. We record this week's episode for you, myself, Lachie Flanagan, Mark Ivka, Nick Dubano, just off the back of Anthony Albanese's announcement to the nation. And as Victorians, whenever there's a last-minute sort of address from a political figure, you do get a little bit nervous. And unfortunately, here at the NPL Victoria podcast, our fears were ultimately well-founded. The fuel crisis that's gripping the country at the present moment. People are doing it tough, and we hope this wouldn't happen. But unfortunately, there has been a victim of this fuel crisis, and it brings me no joy whatsoever to say this, but the Green Gully bus has been decommissioned for the remainder of the season due to the price of fuel across the country. So we send our thoughts and condolences to the Green Gully Soccer Club. I'm kidding, of course. There was an announcement, but all good, no stress. Let's get into the chaos of the weekend, gents. It's still proving to be a very strange league, Ivka, after 2 months down.
Yep, it's a very strange league. You actually can't predict what's going to happen week to week. You think one team's going to bounce back, they don't. Just so many up and down, inconsistent results. Much like Italy that didn't qualify for the World Cup this morning. Nick, commiserations to you. It wasn't an April Fool's Day joke that came out this morning. Italy, again, did not qualify for the World Cup.
Hey, I tried to go down the fuel path. I tried to take it away from other current events, Nick. I just want the record to reflect that.
I've been awake since 5:40 this morning and gone through all sorts of emotions. Gone through, I reckon, all the stages of grief. And this isn't the post-mortem of the Italy v Bosnia game. But I can't believe you had to go there, Ivka. I can't believe you had to go there off the top, buddy. I'm not going there. You've opened up a can of worms, mate. You've rolled me up. I just kind of put it to the side, just as actually we were starting recording. I got the results up here on Flash Score, get the ladder up in the background, make sure I'm all ready to go. And the first thing that comes up is obviously in your favourites bar, the results of the morning. And there it was, Bosnia defeating Italy. Just, it has been a, yeah, no, that's it. Stop. No more mention.
I think it's a genuine, there's been a lot of fuss made about the amount of things that have happened in life since Italy were last at a World Cup. And I think from Nick's perspective, you have to ask the question of what's more likely to happen in his lifetime, Italy going back to the World Cup or Bulleen going back to the top flight. Like it's not been an easy decade for you, Nicholas. And it'll be a night of soul searching at the Veneto Club. Every
is it though?
Ball will have that extra tinge of sadness.
Hold on, no. But is it entirely sad at the Veneto Club? I'm sure we'll get there soon about the mini resurgence that's going on in VPL 1 at the moment, Lachie.
Yes, back-to-back wins for the Lions. Got back on the board against Brunswick City, although that result the least of the discussion out of that game. But more on that later. Let's start off as we do in the top flight and start off with the game that you guys were both commentating on Saturday afternoon as Hume City saw off Preston Lions in a seesawing affair at Nasiol Stadium. A game that maybe didn't quite go the way we were expecting, but Hume City, early doors, Nick, continuing to silence the NPL Victoria doubters.
Well, it was an absolute humdinger of a match. I mean, Ivka and I spoke about this after the game, right up there as one of the games of the season so far, end to end, plenty of chaos, particularly the first 15 so minutes of that second half where there were 4 goals, felt like there was a goal coming basically from every attack at one point. But yeah, as you said, Lachie, a really impressive result for Hume City. That's now 6 games unbeaten since that first round loss against Altona, and they've really turned things around. Look, they came out of the blocks quite strongly, and I think one thing that we must remember is that they were playing a Preston team that were right down to the absolute bare bones defensively. This isn't to take away from Hume's performance because you can only beat who's in front of you, and they did exactly that, and they got a real scare, and Preston put up a real good fight, particularly in the second half. But when you're without the likes of Aiden Bryce, both Bozanovskis, Jamal Ali, even someone like Elijah Adekubi who can slot in at centre-back, even Ollie Kubalay who's played at centre-back before, you're really going deep to have to play Emil Pios at right-back, Dom Foligno at centre-back alongside Jake Tchaikovsky. He hasn't played a lot of football this season, and the difference is very noticeable. And that's no disrespect on the players that came in. They actually, I thought, fought quite valiantly, but it's a noticeable difference when you take out players who are, you could argue that Ali and Bryce are the two of the best defenders in this league. And I think that affected them, in terms of playing out from the back structurally. I think it would, because especially even for the players in front of them, knowing what's behind you, you might be feeling that little bit of extra panic as well, not knowing that you've got the likes of Bryce and Ali there to mop up and sort things out. But Hume, look, as I said, to their credit, they made the most of it. The conditions were very interesting, as we saw for the first goal, Ivka. I mean, the corner to the near post, and Ryan Scott completely lost it. I mean, the wind was just blowing an absolute gale, and it sort of fell short. He just had to sort of throw a hand at it, but in the end, they were able to flick it onto Bayou and get that goal. And really, at that point, it seemed like Hume were really in control, and you felt like, okay, they're in a really good spot to potentially close this out. But Preston have been such great second half teams that the way they responded after the break was almost real no surprise. Naoki Suto, beautiful long-range finish, the exact sort of response they needed. But then again, undone from a set piece for Aaron Calver to put Hume back in front. Preston do really well back the other way. Some great work from Sian Cuba to basically will his way forward, get that ball out wide, and then Zinni was able to tuck home and make it 2-2. And then again, a turnover in defence and open up the door for Chris Engelhardt, who just had way too much space inside the box and was able to finish past Ryan Scott. And look, credit to Hume. They threw bodies behind the ball. They made it hard for Preston when they came knocking. There was a really, really good chance late for John Albano, which was denied by some desperate defending from Taylor Shrivers, who came on his return game. And Hume did what they had to do and got the job done. Steve White, I thought, was immense. Best game I've seen him play in a couple of years. Really looks fit this season. Aidan Coyne, I thought, was tremendous down the right-hand side. Chris Engelhardt. Aaron Calver's really marshalling things really strongly in defence. And it's no surprise they're undefeated since he's come into the starting lineup and started playing consistently. So they're looking the goods. And look, but I think for Preston, when you see the way they conceded those goals, those defensive absences were really, really stark. And they really stood out, particularly on the set pieces. I know that particularly the first goal, maybe the wind and the conditions played a bit of a role in Ryan Scott not coming out to collect. But you could tell that the way they defended those balls coming into the box, when you haven't got that tall timber defensively and that defensive nous, it is going to work in the favour of your opponents when you do have such a big presence up front in Josh Bingham as well, who is so good in the air. So, look, I've got to give Hume the credit. They handled the game brilliantly. When they were challenged by Preston, not once but twice, when it probably looked like Preston might actually run over them in the second half after Suto scored, they responded really well. They got the goals when they had to. And they beat a team that they have, all these teams that has sort of been the top echelon of the table. These have been the games they've struggled to win. And they've come out and gotten the job done here. So credit to them. Really solid result. But yeah, I think Preston will be ruining what if they had a few more of those bodies available.
Yeah, I agree, Nick. We had the same thoughts about the game. I just think they really struggled without Bryce and Ali, not just in terms of their defending, but their ability to kickstart their build-up play, because they really lacked that. Tchaikovsky turned the ball over so many times trying to do it. The only time that they looked good doing it was when Mielides dropped in as a centre-back for the last 10 or 15 minutes, and they started getting some drive out of the back line through that. But not just defensively. I think they've got issues going forward as well. Preston, we saw Luke Francis start for the first time this season, justifiably so, after his performance off the bench against Avondale the week before. Thought he really struggled in that game as well. Just dropping way too deep to get on the ball. your role as that kind of big number 9, the traditional striker, is to occupy the centre backs and be that link-up player. But he was dropping so deep, and Calver and Spink were too smart and didn't follow him, and there was just so much distance from that midfield to the front two, really, after he's dropping in. Suto tried to run in behind a couple of times, just didn't work, didn't have the space to work with it. So they just can't find that formula going forward yet. You know, they've tried so many variations of it with Francis, Markovski, Romero, Brooks as well the week before, and nothing's really worked for them. So they're still scoring goals, which is a positive for them. You know, they've scored 14 goals this season, so it's not all doom and gloom, but they just don't look fluid enough going forward. And you saw that with Hume just dropping off most of the time and allowing them to have the ball and say, well, come at us. We're not really bothered by your build-up play. The only times Preston had looked dangerous was when they would steal the ball at the very rare occasions in the middle of the park and break quickly, as we saw for the second goal for Preston. That was a typical Zoran Markovski goal, as I said during the commentary. You know, that's what they try and do, but teams are starting to work that out. So a few issues that they need to address there. I think Ryan Scott, if he had his time again, probably even the third goal, probably should have done a little bit better when you watch it back. The way he got beaten at his near post, probably should have saved that. But regardless, you know, he had a lot of responsibility on his shoulders trying to marshal that makeshift back four, which is going to be an issue because Bryce is out long term. Not sure when Matt Bosnovsky is going to come back. Damien Bosnovsky obviously long term as well. I think Ali will be back for the next game, and that's where they're very blessed that it's a weekend off NPL Victoria this week. They've still got a tough cup game in Nunawading this week, but I think they'll get some bodies back for the big South Melbourne game in the next round. I think Bulleen is expected to play in the cup this week at a Bulleen as well. So they need those bodies back very quick because they are struggling a little bit without him, and you could notice it on Saturday afternoon. And the thing that really caught my eye was their poor first half yet again. Besides the St Albans game, every first half has been shithouse for Preston. It takes them going into half-time, Zocchi obviously putting a rocket up their asses, and then they come out playing much better football in the second half. They can't afford to start slow every game. You know, they were fortunate that they weren't behind in this one. They were, but came back very quickly when the second half started. But it's going to bite them in the arse, these slow starts. Nearly did against Oakleigh. You know, they should have been 3 or 4 down in round one. So I'm not sure what the issue there is, why they're starting so slow in every game. It's another issue they need to address. But Hume, on the other hand, a lot better than I expected. You know, we all predicted them to finish pretty low on the table, just based off the way they finished last season, and then you know the recruiting didn't appear to be too great when we did our predictions, but that was without the knowledge of Calver coming in at that point. So he's been a huge signing for him. I thought he controlled that back line. And obviously, you know, we'd seen an injured Steve White last year. We didn't know he was going to be fully fit and playing the football that he is. Like Nick said, he controlled that whole tempo of the game on Saturday afternoon. You know, his shot led to the corner for the first goal, which was a fantastic strike outside the box. Had an assist for the third goal as well. So yeah, they're going really, really good to Hume. You know, I don't think they'll be a top 2 team. You know, they're sitting second now, but I think they're definitely a finals contender instead of a relegation battle for them this season.
Do you think there's a reason, Ivka, that Preston are having the injury issues that they do? Is this just a case of bad fortune? Because it does feel like it's not the first time, or it feels like similar to last season where Preston seemed to go very quickly from having this deep squad that you can't sort of pick any holes in to this situation where out of nowhere, the cupboard seems to be bare quicker than anyone could have imagined. I mean, I say bare, it's still a pretty strong side, but it just is. Is it coincidental, or do you think there's a reasoning behind it all?
You have to look at the injuries. I would say it's coincidental because Bryce was a freak incident in the Avondale game that, the keepers landed on him, that is MCL, 2-month injury. Ali, international duty, obviously they would have been aware that will happen throughout the season. Damien Bozanovsky, freak incident. Matt Bozanovsky done his foot in training, so a contact injury. The only one is Brooks, really, continually having hamstring issues. Kublai came didn't do a pre-season. He had surgery in the off-season, so he had a very late pre-season. They were aware of that as well. So, and then Tavia and Abdallah leaving on the eve of the season through a transfer. So the squad that we thought that they were going to have has quickly diminished through no fault of the coaching staff or the club. So they came in with big hype, but when you really look at it, you look at that squad on Saturday. Yeah, it's still a finals contending team, but it's not the team that I'm sure Markovsky expected to roll out with in round 7 of the competition.
Yeah, and contrast that to Hume's squad, and yes, we've all, myself chief among them, had our misgivings about them this season, but actually, on paper, it looks pretty good, and in terms of experience at the top level of NPL Victoria consistently, but also at the A-League as well, there's some pretty solid pieces there, and Calver's certainly made a difference. The game against Oakleigh on the other side of the cup will be a fascinating one because from memory they haven't had a great run. I think I've had a fairly rotten run against Oakleigh over the years. So again, an Oakleigh side who are not in the strongest of form, but it's a team who do sometimes manage to find a way. That'll be a fascinating one to look out for. Anything else on this game, gents, before we move on? Okay. Well, we go to a bit of Tuesday night madness in many different ways. Exactly a year on this game, I believe, from Esteban Quintas's brain explosion moment that sowed the seeds of his demise last year when the second team got rolled out and ultimately cost them against Preston. I think it was a year to the day. I could be wrong. But South Melbourne show no such issues this time around. A 4-2 win against Dandenong City, and a win that I think was maybe 4-2, only 2 goals in it. Ivka, perhaps more comfortable maybe than the scoreline suggested.
Yeah, I thought it should have been probably 9-0, really. South Melbourne absolutely battered them last night. Very impressive from South Melbourne. I think you are wrong on that stat. Look, I think it's a year to the day since Dandy City beat South Melbourne at Lakeside last season 3-1 was what you saw. That was a St Albans game that Esteban started his free fall in round 3.
That's correct.
But still a good comparison because that Dandy City side last year is, the team this year is a shadow of that team that beat them last year. I was really disappointed with Dandy City's performance on Tuesday night. I thought they looked lost out there. Again, defensive issues like they had against Avondale a couple of weeks ago. I'm scared for them. They look in all sorts. They don't look like they're able to create too many chances. Besides Bauer, they don't really have too much going forward. Centre guy came on and scored with his first touch, but he looks a million miles off it at the moment in terms of fitness. Pierce Waring we haven't seen at all in a matchday squad, so don't know where his fitness levels are. McPhee started the game, didn't do much. And then just the goals that they're conceding are so poor from defensive errors. But I do feel for them a little bit because since round 1, we haven't seen a South Melbourne team this strong. Everyone's had a bite at them when they've been weakened. This was as full strength as you get for South Melbourne, and did they take advantage of that. When they've got that full strength squad, they're right up there with the best in the competition. There was so much attacking firepower. Midfield's very strong, defensively so strong. Kyriopoulos is the perfect replacement for Marshall. He's been sensational since he's come in. And they've been asked a lot to do a lot. Some of them to stay back and play the NPL game, some of them to go to the OFC, some of them to play both. This was the first time they've had a 10-day break and a proper crack at an NPL game. And look at the result. It was 4-2. They should, like I said, should have won 9-0. So that's how scary South Melbourne can be once this OFC stuff is finished. In the back end of the season, they're going to be right up there as title contenders.
And yet, incredibly, Ivka, despite all those sort of, bits and pieces they've had to manage, they still find themselves top of the league after that entire period. And Nick, it really is, testament to Sinisa Kahadzic, testament to the strength of the squad. Like, Jake Kyriopoulos feels like one of those players where it's never been a question of quality with him. It's just whether or not he can get his, body right consistently and be out there on the park. And right now, South Melbourne are reaping the benefits of it. Also reaping the benefits of what seems to be a good emergent partnership and understanding between Geordie Swibble and Noel Bernardo as well. You saw one striker sort of feeding off the scraps of the other in this game. A bit of a Tip Brat Milne sort of relationship emerging between the two.
I'm really liking the look of that entire sort of mix they've got up front and seeing how slowly that chemistry started to come along. Bernardo and Swibble, and even with Mikola and Uchida, it's such a dynamic front four with many different profiles. I think that complement each other really well. Swibble's more of your poacher. Bernardo's your all action, pressing, can score goals from anywhere, can play out wide, sort of, option that can play everywhere up front. Then you've got Uchida and Mikola who just buzz around and or have that trickery and are able to create something out of nothing and also find the back of the net. And in the way that Tanisha wants to play, which is very high octane, want to get forward, want to press, I think that they all fit that perfectly, and Swibble will get those opportunities because, they are going to score goals in those moments where there will be, scraps in the box or, or as we saw, they really bombarded them from crosses and were able to get onto the second balls. They're really good at sort of attacking those opportunities and being able to bury those. And as you said, Ivka, this is a South Melbourne team right now that I think they would have probably been this would have been one of the few times I think they would have been quite happy that there was Aths on at Lakeside this weekend, just to get a few extra days rest after what has been just such an incredible schedule. Incredible saying that sort of tongue in cheek because it's incredible. It's been incredible that they've managed it, but incredible in the sense of, geez, how have they played this many games in this period of time? And how have they managed it? Because as you said, the way that they've been able to continue to get points even through what has been such a trying fixture has just been so commendable, and credit must go to the coaching staff and the players for how they've been able to manage that. So now it's going to be very interesting. I mean, we've seen what they can do when they've got full complement. They've had rest, like substantial rest, which I think is just like one thing to remember. Like they had, about 10 days off between games, which is a rarity at this stage. They get another, a 5-day turnaround to playing Hampton East in the Cup. Must feel like a whole week for them, really, given, they've had the games basically on back-to-back days or, 2 days apart or some here, some there. But this next little run of games is going to be very fascinating because they're back on the road again. They're going back to Fiji, or not going back to Fiji. They're going to Fiji for this fifth round of OFC Pro League games. And, when you got a game against Preston and you got to still manage that, workload back here. And we saw that towards the end of the last Solomon Islands hub, they didn't get the results they probably would have wanted there in Honiara. I think only 1 point out of a possible 6. They dropped points, back here in Victoria against Andy Thunder. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that again, and what lessons they might have learned as well from the previous hub in the Solomon Islands and what they do, because they're going to play more games in Fiji this time as well. So what will we see in 2 weeks' time when they enter Geneseo Stadium for that Saturday afternoon contest?
Well, it's going to be very tricky for them because the Preston game's on the Saturday and the game against Auckland is on the Sunday at 1 o'clock. So, is Sinisha ever going to be able to make it to both games? I don't know if there's a flight out of Melbourne to Fiji on Saturday night. It's probably something we should check up because that's probably the quickest turnaround they've had. They were able to manage it in Melbourne last time because they were in Melbourne. This is, a day apart. Your biggest game of the season in NPL Victoria, and then your probably biggest game of the Pro League the next day. So enjoy it while it lasts, this nice little fresh break, because it's going to get chaotic for them next week. Just on Dandenong City, someone asked me today, surely Nick Kyriopoulos is going to be under pressure. I think that couldn't be more further from the truth. I don't think he'll be under any pressure at Dandenong City to lose his job for what he's done for that club, to take him from NPL 2 at the time back into the NPL, make the final series in his first season, and then make a grand final the year after. I could not see him being under any pressure, no matter how pear-shaped their season is at the moment.
Ivka, I've fact-checked to see if he can get to Fiji on time. I'm currently on Webjet at the moment. So if he gets to 6 a.m.
doesn't need to go through the Middle East or anything. So that's a win in his corner.
The issue is if he flies out on the same day, there needs to be a stop in between. So there's no direct flights that get him there on time for kickoff on the same day. There's one that arrives literally 5 minutes before kickoff on the Sunday. But on the Saturday, if he's able to get from... It's just updating here. So give me just a second. I feel like a travel agent at the moment. I feel like trying to sort out his... Yeah.
Half an hour trip from Steel Stadium.
He could do the red eye. Yeah, this is a brutal flight. So he could do an 8... So the game will finish at Genesis Steel, like 5 p.m. on that Saturday? So 6:40... He has 3 options. The Qantas 6:45 p.m. with a stop, which will get him to Fiji at 5:30 in the morning or 5:25 in the morning on Sunday. You get the 6:55 on Air New Zealand. It's a 12-hour 50 flight, including a stop, which will get him there at 9:45 a.m. Fiji time the next day. Or he could go to Avalon. Actually, no, the Avalon one, he won't get there till 3:05 p.m. the next day. So he's got 2 options. If he wants to do both, he's going to have to literally... He better not have checked baggage, because he's going to have to go straight through on carry-on, bare minimum, hope security's at an absolute minimum. Maybe he's going to have to leave Genesis Steel at like the 80th minute, get to Melbourne Airport, and then he's going to have a bit of a brutal flight going to Fiji. So I don't know. Is he going to do both? Is he going to hand off the reins for the day? Because they're also not playing that game in Suva. They're playing in Bar instead. So I don't know my Fiji geography too well. Still on the same main island.
Bar is an hour's flight from Nandi, which is the common destination to fly into.
Right.
Into Fiji from Australia.
Surely South Melbourne can organise a private charter for the man. The amount of hours he's putting in.
I mean, if I have to say, if you want a reason for why maybe your manager shouldn't be on the touchline, and maybe this is why Nick Kyriopoulos is under no pressure at all. The example staring you in the face on Tuesday night, your opposition. Send the assistant manager and to the big show, and it'll go just fine. Or send him to Auckland, and it'll go just fine. Dandenong City will tell you, if you have the assistant manager on the touchline while your head coach is, Aruba, Jamaica, guts up in Greece, it tends to work out. So, don't fret. If you've got to pay extra for, I don't know, a Learjet or something, why don't we just get Max Mikler to just throw him across? That could be an option. Maybe South Melbourne could lean on the generosity of one of their sponsors, who got the plug of a lifetime in the 4th goal of this game. Charlie Leach, I hope you like your Ritos drinks, buddy, because you're never going to have to pay for one again. Scores the fourth goal off the bench, runs to this inflatable Yarritos drink that's been sitting behind the goals, and then just does a big skull against the corner flag. I mean,
talking about guts up. Bottles up.
That was incredible. And, we've had Josh trying to convince us that the cement mixer at Preston is inflatable. It seems we've got an inflatable sponsorship epidemic in NPL Victoria, because another one's popped up and, Charlie Leach has downed it.
Just got a small criticism on that fantastic celebration. Just if you could have got that clean rip away off the bottle, struggled a little bit with the string initially, just slightly, just put a damper on it brought it down to a 9 out of 10.
Let that be a lesson for you, Sinisa. If you're going to maximise time, that the pickup of the luggage off the carousel, it's got to be clean. That's got to be a clean pull. You can't be struggling to lift it. You can't be messing around with tags.
If he wants to get to both games. If he wants to do both games, Lachie, I think, as we said, he needs to go full Craig's carry-on. He can't be checking in baggage.
Underwear, you need to be going in the South Melbourne embroidered breast pocket. A few pairs of socks.
Pick the line. Scope out the line ahead and make sure you get through security quickly. Know what you need to have out of your pockets.
If you've got drawstring pants, Sinisa, and you don't need a belt, I would be going with those personally. Just make sure you got the card holder, nothing that holds coins, nothing's going to slow you up. Go without the rings, all that jazz. Just a quick final. Go on, Nick.
No, I was just You add your final point. Mine's a bit more of a different.
No, I just wanted to ask about Dandenong City, Ivka. I mean, the break coming probably at a good time for them as well. Just looking at their sort of run over the next few weeks on the other side of the Doherty Cup break, Bentley, Green Gully, Dandenong Thunder, Altona are their next 4 games. So that's a massive month for them. In terms of the defensive issues, the instability, doesn't that win against Heidelberg United feel like a very long time ago at the present moment? Is there maybe a case with them that... you look at the spine of the team and some of the players who are starting in this team who have been very reliable contributors at NPL Victoria level, but it has been a team that has relied on experienced heads who are, some of them now, just that 1 year older. Is that maybe where the pinch is being felt perhaps in this team?
Yeah, definitely is. I think if Tolsey had his time again, probably would have maybe let go of a couple of guys, I reckon, and freshen up that squad. It was probably the only criticism I've got. But having said that, it took them till round 5 last year to get their first win as well. So they have been slowish starters. They did have a poor start. Never looked like they were going to make the finals last year, really. Remember them playing Green Gully with a few rounds to go, and they drew that game, and we ruled both teams out of making the top 6. So still a long, long way to go. That's where these teams that are flying high now, your Hume, Bentleigh, Melbourne City, Georgies, they're doing great, no doubt. But there's a long way to go. And a lot of the big boys are faltering at the moment. And I would put Dandenong City in that big boys category. They played in the bloody grand final last year. So, we know what they're capable of. But, last year you felt like it was going to turn. At the moment, it looks more concerning than it did at the start of last year.
I think the next 4 weeks will really tell the story for them, where they go from here. 3 home games in a row against Bentley, Green Gully, Dandy Derby against Dandy Thunder, then away against Altona. So they've got a real chance to build some momentum, playing all the teams around them during this spell. Plus Bentley, of course, who we'll talk about soon, one of the hot teams that are in form at the moment. But I think that Dandy City would probably look at that game at home and think that's still a great chance for us to get some points on the board and show what we're made of. So I think that but by the time we get past these next 4 weeks, I think we'll know a lot more about what Dandy City will see for the remainder of the season and what their goals are, because it can change very quickly, as you said, Ivka. It can flip very, very quickly. A couple wins and suddenly their tails are up. They've got a lot of experience. And yes, look, as you said, maybe they don't have the same squad or the same sort of, I guess, that same level of performance that we were seeing last season. But, when you see how they finished the last 2 campaigns, I'm prepared to almost give them as much leeway as possible just to see what they can do throughout these next 4 weeks. Because I think there's every chance they could come out and win at least 3 of the next 4, maybe even get points in all of those games. And if they get 9 or 10 points, suddenly, they're knocking back on the door of the top 6. And I think, when you look at it, I know that it's ifs, buts and whatever, but you don't take that points deduction into consideration. They're on 6 points. They're out of the relegation zone. They're only 5 points behind Oakleigh. So really, when you look at it for actual points that they have gotten and results they've gotten, 1 win, 3 draws, 3 losses, it's not great having only 1 win, but it could be a lot worse. But I think just that points deduction is just that hammer blow, unfortunately, for them in these early days.
And if you remember at the start of last season, they were conceding a lot of goals as well. It was a couple of 3-3 draws, 2-2 draws. They were very leaky, and then they tightened things up and went on their run, and the rest is history. So very similar start. So yeah, definitely rule them out at your own peril, because I'm sure they'll work it out.
Yeah, no need to push the panic button just yet, Heidelberg fans, but no doubt the team is hurting a little bit at the minute. Not quite as much as the person on the sidelines who copped a ball to the gonads from Jack Webster in this game, but still, it's still a bit of pain. How funny would it be, by the way, if Sinisa just gets onto the plane, the last minute dash to Fiji, and he gets a tap on the shoulder. Excuse me, I think you're in my seat. It's just Nick Kyriopoulos. Like, well, I needed a holiday. The team needs to find some form. I gotta go. I'll be watching the OFC Pro League from the pool bar, mate. That would be an interesting one. An interesting result at Olympic Village as well. Heidelberg United, the other side of that grand final party, held to a 1-1 draw against Melbourne City. A fast-starting Melbourne City who took the lead early through a nice goal from Beckham Baker. Heidelberg able to get the goal back through Ben Collins before the break, a rare goal for him, and it really sparked Heidelberg into life. 45 shots between the two teams by the end of this game, of which Heidelberg had 33. So, Ivka, it was a feast for the neutral footballer, but Heidelberg United, despite their best efforts in this game, couldn't find a way to turn the point they clawed back into all 3.
Look, I think Heidelberg were the better team in the game, but in the end, Melbourne City probably should have won it. They had a great chance with about 10 or so minutes to go. Souza pulled off a great save off Bechanovsky's shot. And then, for me, there was a stonewall penalty that should have been given with about 5 minutes to go for Melbourne City, clearly brought down inside the area. I thought it was a 100% penalty for Melbourne City, so they would have been spitting chips at that. But when you look at the chances that Heidelberg had throughout the game, I get the feeling that if the Heidelberg team from last year, that forward line, played in that same type of game with the same type of chances on Friday night against Melbourne City, they would have won that game 5-1. That's where the area of concern for Heidelberg is this season. I've mentioned it a couple of times in the past few pods, is that they just don't look anywhere near what they were like going forward last season with the personnel that they've got. You lose a striker like Bulduach, which is impossible to replace at this level. Durate's had moments of looking like he's the goods, and then there's a lot of moments where he doesn't look that great. Bramwell's obviously got an injury. We haven't seen him in a matchday squad for probably a month now. Choctaw spoke about last week that he was a squad player last season. Now he's the main man out wide. They can't find that formula with McGowan or Lee on the other side. Either of them haven't really taken that opportunity with both hands. So that's the area of concern for Heidelberg, is the lack of firepower going forward, which is going to cost them in games this season, and it did on Friday night. But Melbourne City with another good performance. They had a lot of changes in their lineup yet again. And I don't think it really matters who plays for them, whether it's scholarship players or fringe players or whoever it is. Their system is bulletproof at the moment. They've got a very systematic style of play that works for them. And, we've seen with teams that go toe-to-toe with them, even Heidelberg, one of the best at doing it, struggled. Melbourne City was pressing them like maniacs. You saw for the first goal came from a turnover in the middle of the park from Melbourne City harassing them. I'm still very impressed by Melbourne City. Obviously I tipped them to finish last, but I've said for several weeks they're probably the most entertaining team to watch. There's probably one team that I actually look forward to watching every single week is Melbourne City, because they're just very, very entertaining, and all their games have a lot of action in it. They do expose themselves a little bit, with the way they play at times, but they're very good going forward. I think they got George Cross in the next game, that will be an interesting game because of the way George's play. That's probably the stereotype of how to play against Melbourne City. It'll be interesting to see if George's can get a result, because I think going toe to toe with them, you can't beat them. They're just so well drilled. I'd say nearly every one of their players has come through the system in the junior levels, and they all play the same way. So they've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. They know where to be, where the pass is going to go. That's why it doesn't matter who's playing, because they've all come through this system that they know so well.
But I guess my only area of trepidation is I reckon this was right up there. And look, I'm not taking anything away from what Melbourne City did, but this was one of their strongest squads, starting 11s they have named all season. When you have seasoned A-League players out there that have played a lot of minutes, like your Kavya McMahonys, Ben Mazzeo, Emin Durakovic, Liam Bonatig, Zane Schreiber, Bestian Kutleshi, Beckenbake obviously getting that goal. That is a lot of talent out there, which, again, they are well within, they can do that, and they are blessed that they are able to do that. But my only concern is what's going to happen as the year goes on. And if they can stack enough points with these group out here on the field, they're going to put themselves in a fantastic position to not fade away as the year goes on. And if those younger guys perhaps aren't able to implement the philosophy in the same manner to these guys who have minutes playing against some of the best in this country. So I guess that's my only area of trepidation, but I completely agree with you, Ivka. They are an absolute joy to watch. They don't fear the opposition. They play with a lot of flair. They play with, some fantastic interplays. I think Beckenbake goal was beautiful. But I guess just still, I want to see as the year goes on just how many points they can get, because these games are important early in the year to stack up the points, get as many as they can early, and put themselves in the best position possible. So when these scholarship players aren't available, when we get towards June and July and the winter months start coming in, and these teams that are playing, these Heidelbergs and stuff really start to get going, and they start to find their feet as the season goes on, what's going to happen there? Because that next level, which there'll be a few of these guys still probably available, who else is waiting in the wings? Could there be someone that we don't know? Maybe I'll have egg on my face and it'll be, they just had the next lot of 9 or 10 players that were ready to step in and play to this incredible level. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did. But, they've got a very experienced team that they put out there against Heidelberg. Probably their best of the season. So credit to them, what they were able to do on Friday night.
I think those thoughts come from us being scarred by victory last season, and the last time they were in the league as well. That's where our predictions of them finishing bottom came from. But when you look at this City team compared to the Victory team last season, Victory was very mentally fragile, whereas this Melbourne City team, they're not fazed by anything. They can see that equaliser from the corner, which was a little bit of poor defending, but didn't bother them. They didn't capitulate and lose the game 4-1. Yes, Heidelberg had a lot of chances in that game, but they weren't deterred by it. They still, that last 15 minutes, were still going toe-to-toe with them, throwing numbers forward, trying to win the game. Whereas Victory, they would have just capitulated after conceding that equaliser and lost the game 3 or 4-1.
I mean, you look at just directly comparison. I know they're different times of the season, so it is hard to do. But I think 9 or maybe 8 of this City 11 that took the field on Friday night against Heidelberg have played professional football, either in the Asian Champions League or in the A-League. The level of commitment we're seeing from City to getting the best out of themselves in this competition, the players they're willing to send down, I think is a very marked difference from what we've seen in the past. I just looked at Victory's 11 from the last time they played Heidelberg, which, yes, was at a later point of the season last year. But I don't think there was a single player who touched the sides of A-League football, which, again, it might not sound like much, but even 10 to 15 games worth of senior experience at that level makes a very big difference to not just your strength, but your fitness when you come down to play this level. And it was quite refreshing and entertaining, I thought, Ivka, to see some of these Melbourne City players doing the sorts of things that we've become accustomed to seeing Heidelberg do. Particularly with those forward runs. Like you mentioned that late chance with 10 minutes to go for, I think it was Bechvanovsky who brings the best out of Souza. And that comes from this driving run from Lachie, a player who started this game in defence, in fullback, making those kind of central runs, committing numbers forward. I mean, that's the kind of box-crashing commitment that we've become accustomed to seeing Heidelberg do. That overloading of the penalty area and players being willing to make risky runs either from fullback or deeper in midfield is part of the brand that's made them so good and a level that many other teams haven't been able to match or be even brave enough to try.
Well, that's a couple of things. They trust the system that they've been brought up in, and like you said, they've all got a lot of, not a lot, but a bit of A-League experience that Victory didn't have. So playing Heidelberg doesn't really faze them. They've played A-League games, Asian Champions League games, where, no disrespect to Heidelberg, but some of those games may have been more competitive for them individually. That's why they're not mentally fragile like Victory was. That squad was used to playing NPL 2 games the year before that, so it was a massive step up for them. So I think City's blessed by Victory being in the competition the year before and would have looked at how they approached it and where they got it wrong. And I'm sure, they would have looked at everyone predicting them to get automatically relegated. It's not good for their brand. Them playing good football and even possibly playing finals football with the way they're going is great for their brand. So they're all chips in to show off how good their academy is, because from what we hear, they've got the best academy in Australia with the way they run it. They've got the facilities, they've got the talent pool, so they want to showcase that. So they're not leaving any stone unturned.
From a Heidelberg point of view, most shots in the league for them this season, they have the most shots per game of any team. I think it's by a fair few as well. Produced so far just the 10 goals, which I think has them middle of the pack in NPL Victoria. So that speaks to exactly what you've been talking about, Ivka, with the sort of step down in clinicality so far. Is there an obvious solve for that? Is there something different they can be doing? Like it does seem to be quite. I know John Anastasiadis is the master tinkerer and the genius of finding a way to fashion a square peg into a round hole. But, you look at the squad and it just doesn't feel like there's an obvious answer to some of the efficiency issues they're experiencing right now.
Yeah, well, it's not a tactical issue, because you just said, they've created the most chances and shots at goal in the competition. So there's nothing wrong with the way they're approaching it. It's just the end product. And it all boils down to what I said before, is that the quality is not the same. Bezzetto is not fully fit. Jawach, impossible to replace. And in terms of solving that issue, there's no real solve for it. They've got what they've got, and they just need to get better at finishing those chances. Like I said, Jarate could come good. I have seen moments from him that suggest that he can be a 10 to 15 goal striker in this competition, but he was wasteful on Friday night. So, it's very up and down. He does have A-League experience as well. Bramwell, if he gets fit again, it's going to take him a while to get going again. I already had concerns on him leading into the season. I know we have differing opinions on him, Lachie, but again, he's not Bull Jawach, is he? But Jawach missed a lot of chances last year too himself, although he put a lot more away than the others have. But how they solve that issue, I don't know. Maybe some finishing training might solve the issue.
Yeah, I think we know what's on the way at Olympic Village on the pitch for Heidelberg this weekend. Let's head to the Bentley Greens. 3 wins on the spin, fellas. Cast your mind back to prior to that run. They looked a million miles off the pace against a weak South Melbourne. Real concerns growing, and all of a sudden, Nick, they've been able to string a couple of 9 points together in the weeks that have followed.
Yeah, I mean, what a turnaround it's been for them. This team is obviously built a lot around the foundations of this incredible defensive units and organisation that they've got. 1 goal conceded in 3, and the goals are starting to come. 8 goals. They've scored 8 of their 10 goals in these last 3 games, so they've found a little bit of an answer up front. Maki Petratos and Anthony Frangi getting on the scoreboard, helped them sort of build that advantage and put their noses in front against Dandy Thunder. But it was a bit of an interesting one. Dandy Thunder had chances. Like, they were peppering, especially as the game went on. But Bentley's resolve, I think, as the game went on to be able to hold out and get this result is exactly what we expect from a George Katsakis team and their DNA of hard to break down. They're going to be hardworking. They're going to be frustrating to play against when they take the lead. They're going to make life hard for you, and they're going to defend for their lives. And that's what we've seen throughout this period. And look, they have won the games. If you look at the table and you look at the games that they have won, they have won the games that they should be winning if they have that, I guess, internal expectation that we heard before the season that they could make a finals push this year. And if you're going to play finals this year, you've got to win these games, particularly against your Green Gullies, your Altonas, and your Dandy Thunders. Tick, 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 tick. Beaten 3 of the bottom 4 teams right there. Some of those teams in and around it, they haven't been able to replicate those feats. So they're getting the wins against the teams that they should throughout this little passage. So I think that if you're George Katsakis, you'd be very pleased with this turnaround. And especially, I think the signing of Maki Petratos has been brilliant for them. I think he looks like a real player. Moe Dara has added a lot in the middle of the park for them. I know we spoke a lot about the late signing of Adara coming in, but you can see why Katsakis wanted to bring him to Bentleigh, and you can see why Johnny A, he was one of Johnny A's trusted soldiers in the middle of the park for 2 seasons, and even before that, obviously, Katsakis brought him to Heidelberg, and now getting him here at Bentleigh and just adding that experience of that steel in the middle of the park, it's been such a big in for them. And now suddenly they go into a game against, we spoke about Dandy City, they play them next. So this completes playing the bottom 4 teams in 4 consecutive games, which, if they can get another win against Dandy City going into games against Preston and Oakleigh, I think they'd feel pretty damn good about themselves considering the way that the season was starting, and they had a couple of those uninspiring 1-0 losses against Hume and South Melbourne where they didn't really lay a glove on them. But since then, they've been able to get the wins and comfortably. This game against Dandy Thunder wasn't as comfortable, I think, as they would have liked, because they did come for them at the end. But to get those points and build a bit of a buffer inside the top 6 and put yourself into 3rd, I think they'd be chuffed. They were top of the league after Friday night, for God's sake. Like that's a pretty incredible achievement.
Ivka, is this run to start the season perhaps your biggest win yet for Brand Kamara? Because 3 goals conceded to start the season 7 games in for a newly promoted team. It's as impressive a defensive stand from a newcomer to the league, albeit a returning face in Bentleigh, as I can recall in my time being a coverer and a follower of the league.
Yeah, look, Katsakis knows what this league is all about. What do they say? Championships are built from having a great defence. And, he would be believing that they can go all the way. Don't worry about that. He wouldn't care about the outside noise. He would be making these guys believe that they're a top 2 side, which they're not, but they've got the equal best goal difference in the league. 3 goals conceded is ridiculous, especially in this competition. They're just a solid team, which is what you expect from a George Katsakis side. I had them as a dark horse that could possibly play finals football based on that factor. You know, his sides are always so hard to break down. You've got Scott Hillier playing as a fullback where he's notoriously played as a centre-back. That's how defensively orientated they are. But they're hard to beat. You know, their losses have been only by a goal. Petrados is the golden boot leader at the moment, so they've got an outlet there. They will struggle in games against some better quality opposition to break them down, which we've seen so far this season. But they can't win every game. So in these games where it's kind of a level playing field, good luck to some of these teams that they struggle offensively to break them down. That's their strong point. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them have probably the best defence at the end of the season with the way they're going. You know, and winning at home as well is important for them. It's not an easy place to go. And the longer this run goes on, the more belief that grows within that squad. I still have concerns about them scoring enough goals in games, but Dandenong Thunder, on the other hand, geez, I think it's going to be a long season for them. I'm really not seeing too many positives coming out of them. You know, there was a lot of concern and question marks leading into the season how they were going to go. We've spoken about it at length about all the outs that they had and the lack of replacements, and it's just reflecting in their performances week to week. You know, they look like a squad that is going to find themselves in a relegation battle, unfortunately. Do they have enough to stay up? Not sure. I haven't, seen enough in 7 games to suggest that they will. I think in the pre-season preview, the only reason why I didn't tip him to go down is because of Adam Pittick and that he's smart enough to work out these issues that they're having and to find a way to get results when they need to get them. But at the moment, it's not looking too good for them.
I felt there was a moment in this game that sort of summed up the fixture for them, which was, I think it was about the 71st minute, a corner they have where Mercy Mehmedi is trying to work the ball into the goal, and in his efforts to do it skew whiffs off his leg, so much so that I think he pulls his hamstring, and he was ultimately substituted a few minutes later. And for a brief period there, watching the footage, it genuinely was not entirely clear which team was the attacking team and which team was the defensive team in that particular sequence of play. A difficult night for them. And on the point of Katsakis and that buy-in, you can tell you've got buy-in from your team and understanding of not just the culture you're trying to build at the club, but of NPL culture when your goalkeeper coach is getting sent off in the second half for diving on the ball on the sideline and trying to waste time. Bentley put out a very funny April Fool sort of fake apology video from the goalkeeper coach today. But Nick, it's the form line. Laughter aside, the form line is not pretty reading for Thunder, who have won 1 in 6 since the opening day draw with Melbourne City. And that one game was against what remains of South Melbourne FC during the OFC Pro League window. It's tough stuff at the present moment.
Yeah, it is, and it's a massive game coming up against Green Gully. I mean, we've spoken a bit about how there's been some relegation 6-pointers early in the season. That's going to be a big one down at George Andrews Reserve. It's odd because, in some of those games early in the season that they were losing, they were in them. Like the Heidelberg game, the Georges game, they were right in them. Probably deserved to get something more from those games, but didn't. And now, that result against Bentleigh, they'd be kicking themselves. They probably would have been hoping coming off the back of beating South Melbourne, albeit, as you said, Lachie, what remains of the South Melbourne team during that OFC Pro League period. They would have been hoping that, hey, it's a win on the board. Let's go to Kingston Heath and let's build some momentum. Let's go get a win against a team they would have felt that they would need to beat to, if they wanted to really get their season up and going and try and at least start to get a bit of a finals push going. But yeah, just really disappointing it's been from them. And I honestly, as we spoke about earlier in the year, Ivka, we said that we felt that despite the absences and the exits, the players that have left, that we thought they were still going to be very strong because of the way Adam Pittick has been able to manage regular seasons in years gone by, getting the best out of what he has. So look, that game against Green Gully now suddenly for both teams becomes just so imperative. And we'll talk about Gully soon, but you look at it, I mean, Dandy Thunder win that game. And suddenly, Green Gully could be 5 points inside the bottom three, heading into, after 8 games. So they would put themselves as well in a position where they can start to build some momentum and get away from those bottom sides. Of course, they'd be not entirely clear of, say, an Altona or whatever else, but that game, you don't want to be losing that game at home, put it like that.
The issue Thunder's got is, the teams that we thought may struggle, Hume, Georges, Melbourne City, they're picking up points, and Dandenong Thunder isn't. The teams that are around Dandenong Thunder, Preston, Avondale, St Albans, you expect Dandy City below them. You expect them all to come good at some point throughout this season. So, the teams that you thought were gettable or in and around you, they're miles behind those teams. So that's where the concern for them going forward is.
Yeah, definitely some rumbles of discontent at Dandenong Thunder. Let's head over to Avenger Park. Two teams who are still trying to fully find their feet, it feels, in NPL Victoria this season. Avondale and Oakleigh sharing the spoils. Two very handy goals in this game. Stefan Valentini scoring the first of the two for his former, now current club against his former club. I didn't realise, it snuck up on me just how much overlap there has been with players between these two clubs, particularly of recent years. There was some good football on display in this game. Ivka, will the teams be buoyed by the quality of some of what they put on the park, or more frustrated that it wasn't to be 3 points for either of them?
Probably the latter there. In particular for Oakleigh, that last 20 minutes of that game had a few very good opportunities. Matt Reid with the header off the line, and then Joe Guest missing an open goal inside the 6-yard box. I don't think you'll see that again this season. So Oakleigh had their chances towards the end of the game. But I think a draw is probably where you would see this game going leading into it, and probably with the way it unfolded. Both teams that are going head-to-head for a final spot, but both teams just can't get going yet. Oakleigh surprises me that they haven't got their season really going just yet. They've been so patchy. They started off that game against Preston in round 1 looking so dominant in that opening 70 minutes, and then obviously we know what happened after that. But they've been a little bit inconsistent so far, Oakleigh, with their start to the season. This is especially with the way the results have panned out, a bit of a missed opportunity for them to get a bit of a gap at the top of the table, which I would have expected them to go for it hard this season. I think watching the championship for them would have been a tough watch. They would have wanted to be a part of that competition, and I would have expected them to really be going for that this season, which can still happen. They've got a lot of quality in that side, but it's just not fully clicking for them yet. Not massive areas of concern, but Alex Salmon looked really off it on Saturday afternoon, which is not good. Liston Diaz is just firing. If he isn't in the form that he's in, they'll be struggling even more so. Defensively, they have some issues. Jacob Trapp was dropped to the bench for this one after his mistakes in the previous game. Brody Boyce came in at centre back, and then that wasn't really working too well. Track came on for Hall, so they can't find that centre back partnership, which we spoke about a couple of years ago that took them to a championship, and then ever since then it's just been an area of concern for them. Last season they couldn't get the right partnership, made a lot of errors, and it's happening again this season. They were a bit more solid, and I think they deserved to win the game on Saturday. And then Avondale inconsistent as well. They had a good patch of form a few weeks ago, go to Preston and lose, and then the forward line wasn't really firing as was previously against Oakleigh and Fornaroli. The combination wasn't there throughout the game. But having said that, that first goal of the game, Avondale's goal, what team play that was. You know, the interchange of passes and then that ball in from Max Green was world class. Great finish from Valentini. So yeah, Oakleigh probably a bit more disappointed than Avondale, but a draw probably a fair result.
And it means, Nick, that Oakleigh, 7 rounds into the season, have not kept a clean sheet. We've seen more goals in their games, I think, this year than any other team. I think 24 in total across their 7 games. Obviously, they've scored more of those than they've conceded. But it feels crazy to say that as a statistic for this team who, other than, you know, the sort of yearly blip on the radar at the back end of the season when they're running on fumes, are just so calm and consistent, particularly at the base of their formation.
Yeah, and I mean, as Ivka said, they haven't settled on a starting back four. Like, what is their best back four? You know, Joseph Ford was the first choice right back. He's since been replaced now by, I mean, Brodie Boyce has come into there playing as a centre back alongside Jordan Hall. Jordan Hall gets subbed out after 45 minutes for Jacob Tratt. So CT is still working out almost exactly what that back four is. And in previous years, you know, that's almost been the basis of it all has been is they've had a very consistent spine, a very consistent back four, with maybe the occasional chopping and changing last season when they had Matt Dench playing at times at left wing or at left back, and you'd have Hampson coming in, whatever they would sort of opt for. But the Hall Tratt or Hall Tratt, Dayu, whoever it was, they had a lot of consistency down there that the majority of that team was staying together. So there are some concerns there defensively, I think, for Oakleigh. But I guess, like, if you want to look at it from a glass half full perspective, if you're Oakleigh, I was just doing a bit of a look into the under-23s from the weekend, and there was a very familiar name that just popped up on the team sheet for Oakleigh this weekend, making his return, by the name of Joe Knowles. Got through his first game for Oakleigh on the weekend. Now, of course, he's not going to solve their defensive problems.
Can he play centre back?
But I mean, if it's just another spoke to add to this already high-powered attack, and you look at the team that actually played in the under-23s, it just goes to show the competition for places. Tom Alessandratos and Mark Batheriotis were both starting in that game as well. So they've got a very deep attack. They've got no problems, I think, when it comes to finding out, you know, who's going to line up front, because you've got a litany of options. I think the big concern for them, as we've spoken about, and something that maybe they could, you know, they get a chance now to focus on the cup, but a chance to work out, all right, we've played 7 games, almost essentially it's quarter time in the season. Let's go back. Let's work out what our best. Let's assess these first 7 games, and let's try and work out what that best 11 is and what is that best back four, and really try and build off it from here on in, and get some good continuity in that back four as well. Because the other thing too is they got a new goalkeeper in Tom Manos as well, and you want to make sure he's building chemistry as well with the players in front of him. So very, very interesting to see where Oakleigh go from here. But that game against Hume suddenly shapes up as a real intriguing watch for both teams to see how they handle that one, given Oakleigh's sort of stuttering start and Hume's struggles against Oakleigh in recent years. And heading on the road there is going to be, I think it suddenly becomes a real intriguing game.
Having said all that, if they beat Hume, they'll jump him. They'll beat him.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, an equal parts entertaining for the neutral, but frustrating one for the two teams involved. I mean, great goal from Avondale. Have to wonder how good their goals would be if they were playing one striker rather than 2. But let's move on from that. I'll keep banging that drum until I see the number 10 up top. But speaking of players up top, very very topical that we move to Paisley Park, where Altona and Green Gully shared the spoils, and in the first game, Mark Ivkovic, of the post-David Schick era, in yet more proof of as if we needed it, that everything that's old is new again at the football club that is Green Gully. These guys pluck a giant striker out of the 20s, out of their back end again. How do they keep doing this? They've played the Football Manager regen card again on us.
I was furious when I saw it. I was hanging to see that starting 11. I was actually refreshing Dribble to an hour and 10 minutes before the game to see if they stuck the team sheet in early. But it was on the hour mark, and I saw number 7, Javier Aratia Piao. Is that how you say it? I'm not sure. Lining up for Grand Gully. Go, surely. That's got to be the 23 striker. Then I see the team roll out. It's a 7-foot monster, this bloke. What were they doing? Playing Gatkek as the striker, your defensive midfielder, when you've got this monster of a 23 striker, which I'd been screaming for him to be playing. You know, you complained about injuries to your forward line when you've got this guy sitting in your 23s. Did he set the world on fire? No, he didn't. But you've got to give the guy a chance, which they did on Saturday night, which was bizarre to me that they hadn't earlier. That's the point of your 23s. And with the size of this guy, and you could see he knows how to play the position. His touch was off and didn't do too much. He only played an hour. But there was something there. He had a bit of presence about him, knows the position. That's why I was furious to see the size of him and was questioning what had they been doing for the 6 weeks before. Why wouldn't you give this guy an opportunity earlier when it hasn't been working for you? But nonetheless, got an opportunity on Saturday night, which was good to see. And, well, they got a draw out of it. They had a few chances, Grand Gully, towards the end of that game. Bilal Habib had 2 or 3 really, really good chances that he should have put away and got all 3 points of Grand Gully. But, I think we all predicted that game besides me. I thought Grand Gully was going to win that game 3-0, but everyone else tipped a draw, I think, in that game. So that's the way that game was going to go. Altona will be disappointed that they didn't get maximum points at home against a struggling Grand Gully side, but Grand Gully still can't find that win. And, from what I'm hearing on the coaching situation, that Michal O'Rourke that took the team on Saturday night is the man that's going to take it for the rest of the season. That's what I'm hearing out of there. Not confirmed, but there's not much noise in terms of other options. No one else has been contacted from what I'm aware of, and they're happy to give it to him.
I mean, to be fair, Ivka, the name of this 20 striker has only just been spat out by Football Manager's generative AI, so I don't think an actual correct pronunciation exists yet for Javier Aratia Pio. Your guess as good as mine. Hey,
we'll just go with Javi.
They keep finding a way to pull strikers out of their 20s who end up coming good or being something approaching what they need. Have they got a coach in the under 20s that they can pull, who's a gun they can pull out of their back end there as well?
He's helped coach on the senior team before, I think. That he's a young coach that's had great success with Grand Gully. So I think that's what they're opting for, is just giving what they've got to go, which is interesting because you would think a club of Grand Gully's calibre would be able to attract a much more seasoned coach that could get him out of this mess. No disrespect to Michal O'Rourke, but he is a very, very young guy that there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders to try and get him out of this relegation zone.
Can I just want to add on this game? Now, Ivka, you set the tempo on the pod last week. You said, if Gully come out and win, I'm going to be pissed. If Gully come out and lose, I'm going to be pissed. So is this the perfect medium? That it was a 1-1 draw?
Because he saw the lineup and he was still pissed.
I was pissed off that they hadn't done this earlier. That's what it was. So I'm delighted that they played a 23 striker and drew the game 1-1. So the only steps forward now. Let's see if he plays next week. That's the question. But at least the players didn't. They pulled out their same usual lousy performances that they've been rolling out with in the previous 6 weeks and didn't come out all guns blazing in this one. So no spray for them.
I mean, he could be the answer to Green Gully's problems, or he could be an answer in question 20 of the NPL Victoria Podcast pub quiz in 10 years' time. Who who knows? Anything from an Altona perspective on this one, Nick? I mean, not a win. They did, come back to take a point. It's back-to-back points. It lifts them out of the bottom three ahead of Thunder. Do you just sort of... It's frustrating to not be able to I guess, kill and extract maximum value out of a wounded animal, but when you're in the position that they're in, do you just take the point and move on?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because they started the season quite promisingly, and you look at these 5 games, and I think they would be a little bit disappointed they didn't get a few more points to their name. You look at that game against South Melbourne that they played in late February against, the South Melbourne heavily rotated team, lost that one, lost at home against St Albans, lost at home against Bentleigh, draws against Melbourne City and Green Gully, leading against Melbourne City, mind you. I know we've sung the praises of Melbourne City, but they were leading in that game and a great chance to get full points. They have left a few points, I think, on the table. Look, it's a point gained. It keeps them clear of Dandy Thunder, and their noses are still clear of that relegation zone. But eventually, you got to start getting a couple of those wins. And they got Heidelberg up next, which is not going to be easy for them. Regardless of this isn't the same Heidelberg that we've seen in the early stages this season compared to last year, but it's not going to be easy for them. They've been in basically all these games, Altona, but they've got to start getting some wins. After what we saw against Hume in round 1, we know it's there. It's just about finding some consistency and getting a couple of wins just to buoy them a little bit at the moment, because you expect one of those sides below them, looking namely at Dandy City or Dandy Thunder right now, even Gully, I guess, any of the three, one of them is going to start getting points on the board and really start to make life hard in that battle to survive.
The only blessing for Altona is they're doing just enough to, keep their head above water. They're in a worse position this time last year, so they've got more points than they had. And, there was big boys down there last year, Melbourne Knights. You thought, they're going to come good. They're going, Altona's in trouble. They did enough, and they're doing enough now. And, what's the aim of the game for them this season is survival. So, they would have been disappointed that they didn't take the form of the Melbourne City game the week before into Grand Gully and putting their foot down and getting all 3 points. But, Loza knows what it takes to survive, and at the moment he's doing just enough like they did last year. And, maybe at some point, like they did last year, they win 2 or 3 games in a row and steer clear of that relegation zone and do enough.
Well, a team who are doing more than enough right now in NPL Victoria. Georgies.
My boys.
Georgies. They're back.
My boys, Georgies.
Back. Even when we thought they were gone against Oakleigh, they are back. A 2-1 win against St Albans Saints. Lucas Burns scoring the goal against his old side to prove the difference at City Vista. Another night of soul searching for. It's been a tough week for you, Nick. If that Bulleen win hadn't have happened, I'd be honestly getting professionals to check.
Honestly, thank God for the Pies. Thank God I'm not a Bombers fan like you, Lachie. But yeah, I mean, look, just on this game, look, Georgies. We spoke about them being the box office team going into the season. They've become the team that just do as a famous tagline I once knew, they do just enough to get over the line, and they able to pound that ball in any way possible. Long throws, second balls, taking their chances, being resolute defensively, and they did just that. I think Georgies, as some people pointed out in the comments, I don't know if you guys saw this on their Instagram, the close-up of the lead-up to the opening goal from Tucker, potentially a foul throw, foot over the line that the officials didn't see. So maybe just something that I think the St Albans fans and their eagle-eyed fans were on, just to keep an eye on. But yeah, Georgie's, end of the day, great response after the loss against Oakleigh. They showed just how tough they've been to beat this season. They don't make games pretty, they make games hard. And, St Albans came at them, they got the game level. Nice goal from Nick Cook, by the way, really good. Bit of interplay then to knock it past Siciliano. But Georgie's coming up the goods, and that's 12 points to start the season, embedded inside the top 6, and only 1 loss to their name. And suddenly, they're looking got to say, they're impressing me. They're impressing me because they're getting a lot of wins against teams that they need to beat. And credit to them. They've beaten Gully, they've beaten Dandy Thunder, they've beaten Dinamo, got points against Dandy City and Preston as well, and probably were quite unlucky not to get something against Oakleigh as well. So overall, if you're Eric Vasiliadis and co, you'd be very pleased with this start to the year.
Yep, I agree. Nick, people, George's fans are very vocal and, have criticised me in particular for tipping them to get relegated at the end of the year. When we make these pre-season predictions, it's based on the squad lists that we have a look at. And when you looked at George's team on paper, there was a lot of journeymen in there and a lot of guys that had played NPL 2, NPL 3 football over the past few years. So that's where a lot of credit goes to Eric Vasiliadis himself, where he has been able to extract the absolute maximum out of each and every one of those players in that squad. They're playing not great football, but effective football, which he's recognised that this squad is capable of playing, and that's the way they're going to win games. Not everyone has to play this beautiful, attractive, free-flowing football because it doesn't work for some teams. Dinamo case in point at times, where Vasiliadis has recognised what he's got. And I love his post-match interviews and the way he speaks. He's so clear with the way he wants this team to go about things. And like I said, he's extracting the absolute maximum out of him. Again, that's where my question mark is. Can you extract the absolute maximum out of him for 26 rounds? Not sure. At the moment, they're flying. They're doing great. And if they can keep this up week to week, there'll be bumps along the way. But if they can keep it going for 26 rounds, they'll play finals football, George Cross. They won't be in a relegation battle. They've got a massive belief in that playing group, which would have come from trying to prove a lot of people wrong like ourselves. And they're doing a great job at it. They've incorporated the long throws this week. Were they great long throws? No, they weren't. They were Timu versions of South Melbourne's throw-ins. And so
at what point is a failed long throw just a throw? where does the line between those two things get drawn?
They were effective, but geez, Dinamo's defending on both of them was very, very poor. And this is the frustration with St Albans. You just knew that they were going to roll out with this type of performance on Saturday after the high of beating Heidelberg. You knew they were going to go to George Cross and lose that game because that's what they do for the last 3 or 4 years. They get up for these games that they shouldn't win and put in a great performance and, St Albans aren't bad, aren't they? And then they can't back it up the week after. That's the question mark on the playing group and their mentality, is you need to be able to back up those performances. All well and good beating Heidelberg at home. Great win, great performance. But you've got to back it up the week after against a team that's around you. And that's a huge loss for St Albans because in terms of the table, had they beat Georges, they would have been sitting above them. And now they're dragged back into the relegation pack. So, they've been there, done that over the last couple of seasons, been so inconsistent. They need to find a level of consistency throughout the season, not just a patch of it, to be able to be competitive in this league.
So is there anything more of a sure thing than them going out and beating Avondale next week to continue this win-loss,
Put your life
trajectory?
savings on them to beat Avondale next week. Gamble responsibly, and we don't condone gambling. But put your life savings on St Albans to win that game.
You know what I want to know is when did Green Gully play St Albans? Because those two teams will be falling over themselves to give the 3 points to the other team. No, you have it. You have it.
The 8th of May is the first meeting at Churchill.
I am going to be locked in round 12 at Churchill Reserve to see who conspires not to win more in that game. I mean, St Albans.
Well,
just looking back at the last few seasons, I think they've only won back-to-back or consecutive games 3 times since the end of 2023, and 2 of those 3 times were when they had to win 4 games in a row to save their asses, which they've now done back-to-back seasons. You can't. There's a long way to go, and it could be a lot worse. But it is just frustrating that they can never seem to build on that momentum until the Grim Reaper is sort of sharpening the cleaver at the doorstep, because at some point that's not going to work. The 4 wins in a row aren't going to be there when you need them most.
100%.
Shall we?
Sorry, that's what's frustrating about St Albans. Like, you just think, okay, you've stayed up in the league again, recruited, not bad. Just go for it. Believe in yourselves. Like, I don't know why there's so much doubt creeps into that playing group on a week-to-week basis. I think the positive thing is that Isgrove should be back after the cup round as well, which will give them a bit more quality going forward. But yeah, it's not in terms of the quality that they've got. It's the mentality that they've got. They just need to improve that and find the way, like you said, Lachie, to win back-to-back games and move up the table instead of continually just yo-yoing around that relegation zone.
Shall we head to VPL 1, gents? Because it was the VPL 1 was back to its best at the weekend. I think we had 2 3-2 score lines, a 3-all draw. There's a lot to sink your teeth into here. I have a feeling though that Mark Ivkovic will want to talk about another game that involved 3 goals being scored. Melbourne Knights bringing an end to Northcote City's reign of terror in VPL 1 with a statement, at least on paper, 3-0 result. Ivka, does the statement on paper match up with a statement on the pitch?
Yeah, that's a fantastic result by the Knights. They really took it to Northcote, and I think they've unlocked a way to play against them is just be aggressive and in their face. They are a young squad, and we know when you play these younger teams, you need to get in their face and stuck in, and the physicality really showed, in particular in that first half. The Northcote was shell-shocked. It was just that absolute aggression, and as you guys like to use your AFL superlatives, front foot footy from the Melbourne Knights on Friday night, and it worked a treat for them. And I remember saying in the VPL 1 season preview that what's going to be key for the Knights is their home form in VPL 1, where I was concerned that they would struggle at home because these teams coming to Knights Stadium that haven't played there would really get up for those games because of where they're playing, and it's a big occasion for them. They've been faultless at home so far this season. Played 4-1-4. They've scored 10 and conceded 2 at home in so far this season. So they've definitely made Knights Stadium a fortress for themselves. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Mick Calandrella. He's really got this team well organised, well drilled, and the results show. 3-0 first team to knock off Northcote, not in a 2-1 win with a late goal. They dominated Northcote and deserved the 3 points.
Yeah, and it sets up a table where 5 teams are separated by 3 points. Obviously, there's the promotion playoff spot still in effect, so it does cast the net a little wider. Nick, what caught your eye this week? I'm sure you want to talk about Bulleen, but I do want to mention, even though they lost, that Manningham are absolutely Manninghamming this year. 18 goals scored, 12 goals conceded.
Oh, they're so back
on the table, giving 3 points to a team in relegation danger in FC Melbourne Serbia, who came back from behind to win 2-1 at Petty's Reserve. It's been about as true to form a return in VPL 1 as you would expect.
Oh, absolutely. Like, they are the chaos team of this league, and that result, both teams coming off a loss going into that Manningham-Northcote game after the cup break, that's going to be, I used this word earlier, humdinger. This is going to be an absolute humdinger down at Petty's Reserve. I am very excited for that. It's a shame it's going head-to-head with the big show, because it'd be great to be in 2 places at once. But nonetheless, look, this is a really good result for FC Melbourne Serbia, though, regardless, because they've been struggling to start this season. 1 win out of 6 to start the year, but to go to Petty's Reserve and win, Petty's Reserve is never an easy place to go and get results. But that early red card did hurt Manningham, because really from there, Melbourne Serbia were able to take control and come from behind and win the game. But across the league, you spoke about it. I mean, Brunswick Juventus winning, they cut the gap. North Geelong beating Eltham Redbacks 3-2, which in a 5-goal thriller down at Elko.
Scored all of their goals in about 7 minutes in that game as well.
Absolutely. So now they find themselves right in the mix, only goal difference behind Manningham, and Eltham are still right in the hunt too on 13 points. And Lachie, I'm sure you want to chat about this because the Melbourne Victory were up 3-0 inside the first 25 minutes, but then your boys from Lachie in the last 30 minutes decided, not today, pal. We want something from this game, and a 3-3 draw. Like, geez, what a result!
Yeah, I know.
By all reports, they should have won that game 4-3. Apparently, they had a golden chance to win the game.
Well, I don't know what Jamie Skelly would have said at halftime, but it clearly worked. The goal for I think 3-2 as well from Joe Tweets. I've had it sent to me privately. Absolutely cracking goal, like a half volley from outside of the foot, half volley from outside the penalty area. A really special strike. Elsewhere in VPL 1, you mentioned, Nick, that 3-2 win.
Before you get to, if you're going to get to where you go to, you asked me what caught my eye. I forgot to mention just one more thing. I'm really sorry to cut you off.
No,
so North Sunshine, we're playing out at Ironbark Fields on...
no, you've stolen my
on the weekend.
You've stolen my...
Oh, jeez, the hype is real. No, you know what? No, go. Yeah. Yes.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. How good. BPL one's back, baby.
For those not au fait with their animal sounds, that was the noise of a cow, because there was one visible in the background of the stream at Ironbark Fields as North Sunshine Eagles secured a 1-0 win against the Port Melbourne Sharks.
Tell you what, good cow, was it?
Yeah, well, in a very animal-themed fair at Ironbark, we had eagles, sharks, and cows, and probably a couple of donkeys as well.
I mean, Lachie, that cow impression, good audition there for a role on Play School, or one of those, those toys that you pull down the lever on the side and it goes, "That's the sound of a cow." So,
I am available for any freelance sort of farmland voiceover work. Old McDonald, if you ever need me, I'm available. A fascinating turn of events out at Ironbark Fields. A double game weekend for Ironbark Fields. All right, there's only one game left to go in VPL 1, so let's keep this on the rails. Nick, some sweet relief for your beloved Bulleen Lions. Back-to-back wins. Lucas Vaz and Finn Harbinson scoring both in this game. I'll let you get the celebrating out of the way before we get to the other bits and pieces of this game.
Bulleen never win at Dunstan Reserve until last Friday. The amount of times they've gone there and dropped points and lost, and counted, there's been way too many. But this time around, carrying that momentum of last week when they knocked off your boys, Ivka, the power of the band. It was last Saturday, the live band playing behind the grandstand. And they went to Dunstan Reserve and got the job done. I mean, look, after the doom and gloom of the first few weeks, suddenly they're knocking back on the door of the top 6 with 2 very impressive results. Beating Melbourne Knights at home. Yes, you can say what you will about the red card, but they still had to get the job done. They did exactly that. They weathered the early storm when both teams were at 11 and they were able to take their chances. And then you go to a place like Dunstan Reserve where historically a lot of teams struggle, where they've struggled enormously over that period of time and get a win. That's a massive tick in my book. And now they come into a game off the back of this break against Western United where they have a real chance to start to close the gap on the top 6. So they've gone from a team that were down that bottom half of the table, perhaps looking a little bit, what's going on here, to now there's a a little bit of excitement starting to brew back in at the Venator Club. I'm just saying. And a big thing has been the inclusion of young Marinucci at centre back, who has come in from the youth team and has stepped up. Obviously, came across from Melbourne City, 17 years of age, and it's no surprise seeing now the results are starting to turn for Bulleen. So I'm pumped.
Oh, what do you know?
I'm ready.
Players playing in their correct position. Wow, what a surprise that it actually works.
Yeah, well, if at the end of the day...
Correct. Are we sure that's his correct position? Young Marinucci sounds more like a rapper, an upcoming Italian rapper.
Louis Marinucci, young Marinucci. But no, honestly, look, back-to-back wins. It's a good little patch for them. Hopefully they can kick on from here and start to climb up the ladder because, the pressure was on Jacopo LaRocca early days and he's alleviated a lot of that with two very good results. And these next two games, Western, Lang Warren, then they've got North Geelong, North Sunshine, FC Melbourne, Serbia. So in that stretch, considering they play North Geelong at home as well, they probably think they can get quite a few points from a possible 15 there and really start to, close that gap on the sides above them. And who knows? Maybe we're gonna start, just asking a few questions. They're only 5 points behind Manningham. You never know.
I just want the listeners to know that every time I listen to Nick talk about Bulleen after a win, when there's still a material chance they are in the promotion conversation, the image of Michael Scott from The Office with the caption "I am ready to be hurt again" is just burned into my brain at this point. I cannot see anything else when Nick starts to talk about this. Look, it wasn't a great weekend in Victorian football for the nickname, unfortunately. Debano reeling from Italy, but Ivka, the VPL 1, often a headline-making league, was a headline-making league for all the wrong reasons. In this game, Nick Kyriopoulos red-carded for an incident on the sideline involving a referee. It's I don't know how the clip emerged with the audio, with the top-down VO vision, but it did, and it wasn't a great look. It wasn't pretty.
Not a great look at all. The irony of it is that a few hours before that video surfaced online, I was having my weekly chat with a few people about all things Victorian football, and the topic got brought up about is he under pressure in terms of his coaching position because the results have been pretty poor. And the consensus was that he would start being under pressure. And lo and behold, a couple of hours later, that video surfaced online. And, geez, one, terrible look. There's not on. Female, male, whatever the official is, you cannot speak to an official in that way. It's not 1985 anymore. My understanding is that he'd already been sent off prior to that incident. That was moments after he got sent off. So he didn't get sent off for that. I think it was a disallowed offside goal that they weren't happy about, and then he obviously was very worked up. But there's no excuse at all for that kind of language or behaviour to an official. And I'm glad that video got leaked online because it did get leaked. That's Brunswick City's VO footage that obviously someone's cut that section out and brought it to someone's attention, and it's gotten out there. But it's good because it's exposed him. And, not only is he going to get a lengthy ban from Football Victoria for that, no doubt, but I dare say he's going to be in big trouble to keep his job. The team's struggling as it is performance-wise, and then that comes out. He's fighting an uphill battle, and, I don't think anyone will be shocked to see him lose his job over it.
Yeah, I mean, the footage is bad enough in its own right, but when you've got, presuming that is the club's VO footage, and so therefore it would had to have come from someone in the Brunswick City ranks. If you've got someone leaking against you in your own club, that is. I'm not an expert on many things. I mean, two of the teams I predicted to get relegated in NPL Victoria have lost one game all season. But feel like we know enough to know that when that's happening internally, that's never a good sign. But I think good credit as well to Daniel Anderson, the assistant referee on the night, who just stood her ground. Really, didn't put up with what she was subjected to. And good on her. Like, no referee should have to just sit there and cop some of the stuff that they have to cop. And look, they don't always get it right. We all know that. But their level of leniency probably is already extending beyond the reasonable bounds at the best of times. So, yeah, to see that it wasn't sort of something that just went unpunished or unchallenged or anything was obviously you take hope from that, and you hope that's by the end of the season the least of her worries. Do we want to look at the cup fixtures? Is there one you're watching out for? I don't know if we do the predictions now. Do we get the chance to sit on our predictions?
No, we got to tip
for a week.
We got to tip, buddy. I don't think there'll be a pod next week to
Yeah,
review the cup games.
no pod next week. So yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
None of that.
All right. Let's do the NPL Victoria tipping. I'm coming off my best round of the season for tipping, which has pulled me off the bottom of the tipping ladder. But I think that's because I get to, when I don't go on the podcast, I get to do it 2 days later and in our WhatsApp chat. When I have to think about it on the fly, that's when my worst results tend to...
Hearing lots of excuses here, Lachie, coming from bottom of the ladder, but lots of excuses
you weren't on the pod the week before that, and he tipped the one, mate, so...
Yeah, but that's 5. That's more than I got the previous few weeks. Anyway, let's start round 8 with St Albans v Avondale at Church Hill Reserve. Nick.
Well, St Albans are going to win. I'm not going to quite go to that level, but I do think that we're going to see a response from St Albans. And I think they're going to edge a 2-1 win against Avondale on Friday night.
Ivka?
I like it, Nick. I like it. Like I said, this is the type of game that Dynamo bloody wins. Friday night, Church Hill Reserve, 2-1 to St Albans.
Well, if you're putting your house on it, Ivka, I'll be sending the debt collectors because I don't share your optimism. To be quite frank, I think Avondale are going to win this game 2-1. A rarely cited 2 o'clock kickoff for Heidelberg United at home to Altona Magic, Ivka.
Yeah, that's a bit strange, isn't it? On a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock at the village. Oh, come on, surely Heidelberg puts their foot down in this one and convert 3 of the 47 chances that they create and win this one 3-0.
Yeah, I'm going to say Heidelberg win this game 3-0 as well.
I'm really confused. Are the Greek clubs observing Earth Hour or something?
It's Orthodox Easter.
That'll be it.
Yeah.
There we go. No, they're observing something far more important. I was like, 2 o'clock kickoff for Heidelberg and a 4:30 Saturday kickoff for Oakleigh. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I think Heidelberg will get the job done in this one. I'm going to go 2-0. Yeah, if that's the show, this one is definitely the big show. Preston Lions v South Melbourne, or what remains of South Melbourne in Australia. Very hard one to tip because we don't know. We know that a South Melbourne will show up. We don't know what construct of that South Melbourne will show up. Nick, I'm going to make you walk the plank first.
So my prediction is, this is a really tough one. It's a really tough one, of course. We're not really sure exactly which team's going to be available. And we're not really understanding of the constraints and everything that comes as a result of it. So my prediction is Sinisha gets on the 6:45 p.m. flight on a Saturday night, leaving the Qantas flight that arrives in at Fiji at 5:30 on Sunday morning. He gets on the red eye. He gets up early and he goes to work the next day. and he's on the touchline for both games. I think Preston win this game 3-2 because I think South might leave. I think just look if they take a similar approach to what they did in the last hub and leave a couple at home, I think that we can expect probably something a little bit similar. I think Preston win this game 3-2.
I don't think it'll be a 3-2 game. So far this season, these big games have been very, very tight and not many chances created in these big games. I reckon Preston will edge it 1-0.
I predict, I think Sinisa will take the complimentary breakfast. He'll refuse the hot towel, and I think he'll probably get a long black, maybe two.
Do you think he'll get Wi-Fi on the plane?
The kid behind him will not kick the seat, so that's.
Will he get Wi-Fi on the plane?
Yeah, I think he will. I think he will for a flight like that.
What do you think? What do you think he'll watch?
Oh, that is a great shout.
What's a great movie? What's a great flight movie?
Any Given Sunday, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, he doesn't really strike me as the Marley and Me kind, with the greatest of respect.
I don't think that you'd want to be watching Marley and Me as you're trying to go on a happy trip to Fiji and having to sit through emotional torture like that on Lachie.
Yeah, maybe Escape to Victory. If that's still on the infotainment set, maybe he just gets an iPad. I don't know. I don't think anyone will be kicking his seat, but he might be kicking the seat in front of him because I think Preston Lions are gonna win 2-1. And I reckon he'll be stewing on that. 4:30 football at Jack Edwards. Oakleigh Cannons against Hume City. Mark Ivkovic. Hume City getting the job done against the team they usually don't get the job done against.
Well, they've been getting the job done against the teams they usually don't get the job done against. But I'm still not brave enough to tip him in this one. I reckon Oakleigh 2-0.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Ivka. Oakleigh 2-1.
Oh, see this. You guys they're swaying my vote here, but you can't win in the tipping game if you just do what everyone else does. Said by the man who was sitting last until this weekend. I reckon they go a step closer. I reckon it'll be a 1-1 draw. I just can't shake the feeling that that's got a bit of draw energy about it, but I'm ready to be wrong. I usually am. Dandenong City, Bentley Greens. Bentley looking to go 4 in a row at Frank Holohan Soccer Complex. Ivka, do they go 4 in a row?
Well, speaking of draw energy, this one's got draw energy all over it. Bit of a grudge match this one. This will be the first time the former Bentley boys face up against their old club. There's a lot of them. Tolsey, Jack Webster, Corey Saul, and the others. Jeez, this is a tough one to tip, especially considering we watched Dandy City last night capitulate. 0-0 this one. Boring 0-0 draw.
Dandy City win the grudge match 1-0.
I think I'm with you, Nick. I think it's just going to give them that extra bit of meaning that Dandy City need, and I'm going to go. It's Dandy City. Yeah, I'll go 1-0 as well. Here's another. The predictions get no easier. On Saturday night, just down the road, the unlosable game, Green Gully, another must-win game for the 3rd week in a row, is now the time as they travel to Dandenong Thunder, Nick.
I think it's going to be disappointing that that unfortunately they're not going to be joined by a certain something, like as you spoke about at the top of the podcast.
The boss. And
it's disappointing won't be making the long trip.
Desperate measures.
We could have all been having the opportunity to to see the Green Gully bus on one more opportunity down in the southeast, but unfortunately it's not going to happen. I'm thinking in my head seeing the Green Gully bus taking the turn off the Tulla towards a different destination, like in Fast 7, while the... I don't know, who would be driving... Anyways, let's see. We're going way down the rabbit hole here. The pod's gone on long enough. I think Dandy Thunder win this game on the weekend, 3-2.
Bloody hell, this is so hard tipping, isn't it? We've picked the worst season to track our tips. Usually, you've got four games. Usually, you
sure
guarantee
things.
Kind of, yeah. Whereas, in particular, this round, the games could just go any which way. Draws, wins, losses for whoever. I don't know. Dandy Thunder, 3-0.
This is your fault, Ivka. We were living very, very blissfully unresponsible for any of the things we said on the podcast, never holding ourselves to account, only occasionally being held to account by the outside world. I reckon it's another 1-1 draw. I reckon the spoils are being shared.
Oh, no.
The final game of the weekend, Melbourne City at home to Caroline Springs, George Cross, Ivka, your boys. Is it another 3 points on the table?
It's another bloody hard game to tip. Well, Georges have the correct style of play to come up against Melbourne City. I just think they won't obviously go toe-to-toe with them. In terms of trying to play in possession. Oh, fuck! I'm stumped this week, boys. Usually I'm very confident in my tips.
We could have not done this, by the way.
Yeah, we didn't have to do it.
1-1. I reckon Georges get a point on the road.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Ivka. City's A-League men's side are playing Saturday and Tuesday, so I think there might be a few unavailable between those two fixtures. So I think that Georgies are going to get a point in this one.
I don't like for all three of us to predict the same thing. I mean, who knows what's going on in Josh's brain at any given moment. But City are the draw specialists. They are the draw specialists. And Georgies are, doing better than we thought, but they're not the most entertaining team. This could be a 0-0 on the way. So I'm gonna go for a goalless draw between those two. Gentlemen, thank you as always for your company. Thank you to all of you for listening in, whether that's been on Spotify, YouTube, wherever else you may find us in these crazy times in NPL Victoria. Whether you're celebrating, Earth Hour, Greek Easter, whether you're driving a bus, whether you've already made the transition to electric vehicles, we hope the Doherty Cup weekend is an enjoyable one for you. We're going to stick our heads back down from the parapet for a week, no pod next week, and we'll be back to dissect the madness that is NPL Victoria Round 8 in 2 weeks' time.